Hey everybody, welcome to the training all about adjunct intensives. I'm Stephanie Feld and I'm double pink-eyed. So if you're looking at me and thinking like, what is happening to this woman? I have pink eye. Ugh. And I know, I don't think I told you that, Tina.
That
And
sucks.
Tina, how do you say your last name?
Kocol, like hot
Oh,
cocoa with an L at the end.
Kocol. I love that. Is here with us and she is a total badass. Philly EMDR. I'm super, super excited to chat today all about adjunct intensives. Um, yes. Okay, we have people coming in the chat, which is amazing. Yes, somehow I helped my child recover, but then I got it like a week later, right when you think you're in the clear. Okay, so I have my messages here. There we go. If anybody is hopping in, we'll just say keep your cameras off and we'll focus on the official presentation. But put a comment in the chat. How's everybody feeling today? Hopefully not pink-eyed. And if you have any questions specific to adjuncts, we'll get to them as we go. Oh, thanks, Tina. Okay, so for people who do not know you, can you give us a little bit of background about who you are and the work you do?
Yeah, so my name is Tina. I live in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I am a licensed professional counselor. I'm EMDRIA certified. I am all but finally sending in the paperwork to be an approved consultant.
Yay!
Um, I'm a certified group psychotherapist as well. I do ketamine assisted psychotherapy and I also do therapeutic horticulture. So I have a pretty eclectic practice. But in my private practice, I have for the past several years exclusively been doing adjunctive intensive EMDR. And that was born out of my previous experience of really loving EMDR and getting into it and getting really
Hey,
good
I'm
at it.
on a Zoom. I'll need to call
Oops.
you back, okay?
Just make sure everybody is muted. Okay, carry on.
Yeah,
Okay.
so
Okay. All right.
was
Thanks. Bye-bye.
I was working previously in a lot of residential rehabilitation facilities, and when I was trained in EMDR, I had to get really good at doing it as quickly as I could and moving a lot of targets quickly and helping people along because my clients were only there for 3 to 4 weeks tops, so like 21 to 28 days, and so I couldn't see everybody for an hour every day. So what I started doing was pulling people for like 2 and 3 hour long sessions in between groups and stuff like that. Um, and supplementing their regular therapy and case management with these more intensive sessions.
Mhm.
When I went into private practice, I started with just conventional hour-long therapy, build a regular caseload, and just didn't like that. Like I really had loved the model that I was starting to build when I was working in these rehabs. And then I thought, well, why am I doing therapy I don't really want to do? And why don't I do it the way I want to do it? Because I know that it works. And I know that there are probably people outside of drug and alcohol rehabilitation that would be served well by this. And yeah, just started to do it. Started with at first my clients. And then little by little started telling other therapists about it. And slowly but surely, my regular clients kind of fell off my caseload. And then have just basically been seeing clients adjunctively. And I really enjoy being able to um, collaborate with other therapists and other specialists who are really good at what they do. And I like staying in my lane. I like doing EMDR and I like getting it done quick. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I'm doing over here.
I love that. I so relate that sorry, I'm still admitting people into the group. I totally relate that personally. I enjoy that like highly focused, kind of get in there, go deep, and then people go back to their primary therapist. That's not always like right for every therapist or every client, but it's really cool if that's the type of work that you love to do, that you don't have to do the standard like weekly
Yeah.
type therapy.
Yeah.
Cool. So if someone just asked you, like, well, what is an adjunct intensive? How do you kind of like share about it?
Yeah. So one of the ways that I break it down for people is your primary therapist is the head coach. I am the
Ooh.
special teams coach. So I am here to get on the field as little as possible, but we're only there to score points and kick field goals. So we're doing really specific work for a very specific amount of time. And then you're back to the regular game. You're back to the other parts of your life. You're back to your other therapy. And I specifically work with acute and complex PTSD. So either I do a lot of recent event exposure, so like single incident, recent event traumas, car accidents, house fires, traumatic death of a loved one, that kind of stuff. But I also do what I think a lot of EMDR therapists, especially through the pandemic, have kind of gotten of like, I don't really think that my stuff is traumatic, but I can't do X, Y, or Z, or I can't break through this barrier, in my life for whatever reason, whatever it is. And when people get stuck with their primary therapy, they haven't really had a place to go to or know where to turn if my therapy isn't working, then like there must be something wrong with me. And what really ends up being a lot more helpful is like, hey, why don't we go see this trauma specialist? You
Yeah.
may not recognize what you went through as traumatic, but your nervous system has a different opinion about it. And this is why you're having these symptoms and why this conventional therapy isn't lasting as long as you want, isn't as effective as you want it to be, so on and so forth. And so what ends up happening is people get a lot of relief really quickly because it's pretty low hanging fruit. Like it's stuff that people have identified as like, those negative cognitions. They know that they're there. They know that they think about themselves and have belief systems around that. They just don't understand how it started or the depth of it. And doing that work intensively, I work with people typically like 8 to 10 weeks. And I do 3-hour long sessions. So
Is that like once a week, 3 hours once a week?
yeah. Yeah. And I really like that model because it allows them to have the intense experience of doing a longer session and getting a lot of work done in a short amount of time. But then when we have the week between, they're able to look at their triggers, they're able to move through their life with their nervous system, trying to regulate and seeing how they're adapting to that. Sometimes they're continuing to see their primary therapist, and so they may be continuing to do other treatment as well in this new nervous system that we're providing for them. Yeah, and over the course of a couple of months, they're feeling better, and they're in like a new, they may have been into the greener. What I say, they're into the side where the grass is greener, but they're in like a plexiglass box, and so they can't connect with people.
Yeah,
So
good
they just want
images. Oh my gosh. I love that there's like creativity and flexibility even in this, because your format is the like 3 hours once a week for 8 or 10 weeks. I do more of like the 3 hours for 3 days, and then maybe that's like once a quarter or like once a month or something. So it's cool that it can still be customized to like what works for the therapist schedule and like what works for the client schedule. And it didn't even occur to me what you said before about like maybe the client is thinking they've done something wrong, or they like it's not working because of them. I'm always thinking like maybe the therapist is feeling that way. Because I know I've had clients where maybe we're not it doesn't feel like we're breaking through or we're not like getting where I would want to go. And as a therapist, I'm like, oh my gosh, I must not be doing something right, or I should have done it this way or whatever. And you feel so stressed, and then you don't want to like, maybe you have like a consultation group where you feel safe enough to like talk about that, or like a consultant or a supervisor or whatever. But a lot of times I think therapists just like hold it inside and
Yeah.
just keep going and going. And so my experience has been adjunctive intensives actually can serve therapists who might be feeling kind of crappy about like, why isn't this client getting where we want to go? Like now they're not all alone trying to figure it out. They can like collaborate with like a therapist who has a different skill set or a different like perspective or whatever.
Yeah, and I think that that's a really good point. So when I was in grad school and studying counseling, I did a dual master's in conflict resolution and case
Ooh.
building. In addition, don't recommend doing 2 degrees at once, but I did it, and it was, I mean, I survived. But I really see and conceptualize a lot of my clients through like a peace building lens of like, how are we
Ooh.
building more like peace and cohesion and ease in their lives? Like, and that could include symptoms of chronic and persistent mental illness, but I don't have to get rid of every single symptom they have. They don't have to have relief from every single symptom if it's adaptive for them. And so we're really like looking at it from a perspective of like, how are we creating ease and building peace? And that includes like the various stakeholders of support for that person. So their social supports, their family supports, their financial and logistical supports, but their therapy supports, you know, beyond my intervention is a really big component in that. And like you were saying, for therapists who are feeling like, oh, I'm trying really hard and I'm doing my best work, and like we're not getting there. Um, it's, I think, often just a matter of like having like having a different coach come in, like having a specialist just
Yeah.
come in and work, you know, just a little bit differently. And I also work with a lot of other very specialized therapists. So folks who do eating disorder specialty, addiction specialties,
Mm.
a lot of, like religious trauma, and like folks, LGBT specialties. And so
I
people
see a
who
lot
have,
of, I was just gonna add another one in. I do a lot of adjunctive stuff with OCD therapists
yeah.
because I see a lot of co-occurring like with the neurodivergent adults I serve.
Yeah, that's a big thing that I've started kind of like talking about with people is like, hey, if you're having PTSD symptoms after we've cleared your targets, um, then we're talking about neurodivergence and maybe not PTSD, and people really discovering, you know, especially girls and women who just miss being diagnosed because they, you know, the criteria wasn't written for how they presented. And yeah, so it's been an interesting ride, because oftentimes I have the conversation of like, hey, I'm maybe the first like very specific specialist you're seeing for your mental health, like beyond your maybe kind of generalist or semi-specified therapist you're seeing. Um, you know, for the ongoing therapy, but there may be a series of other specialists that would be good for you beyond.
Yeah.
And I also think another thing that people end up graduating to, I'm a therapist who believes that like we shouldn't always be in therapy all the time, like having like the routine of our therapy, like if you like it, great.
Right.
But
If
like,
you enjoy it, but it doesn't have to be.
I don't love going to therapy even when I know I need it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so for me, like the idea of having therapy every week for an hour for the rest of my life, like just doesn't seem worth it. Like I'll take my medicine once a day, but I don't want to go to therapy once a week. Um, but it's okay because my philosophy is like we're trying to teach people, and the point of trauma work and regulating one nervous system is to be able to help people live their lives in a way that they are creating a mental health plan that they can manage and they can create, and they don't need like specialized treatment to manage or have controlled by somebody who is not them, through their social supports and community, through the things that they love doing, through, you know, the way they care for themselves and identifying themselves as an important person to take care of in their lives. Like all of that stuff is a really big shift that we can do in EMDR. And when we work intensively, that shift happens really quickly, like I
Fast.
said.
Yeah, yeah. As you were talking, I don't know if there's like Ted Lasso people in the space, but I'm a big Ted Lasso fan, and I was just thinking of all the different coaches in that show and like how they show up in different ways. And like the team is so much better because there's coaches with different personalities and strengths and whatever. And I love that idea of if we can like get over the scarcity mindset or like the competition of like, well, I can't have a treatment team because I need to keep my clients, da da. That's not putting our clients first and like their well-being first. Like when we
Yeah.
can come together as a team and work together, like you're saying, clients see deeper transformation. It happens more quickly. I think it fills our cup more too. You know, it's encouraging as the coach who comes in with like an intensive strategy. And then it's encouraging and like filling for the primary therapist too, because there's nothing worse than logging on to session after session and feeling like you're having the same conversation over and over. Like that's
Yeah.
just such a bad feeling. And I'm sure we've all been there. Like, I mean, it's fine to talk about the same topic, but when you feel like stuck or stagnant, it's
Yeah.
rough.
And I think too, like a lot of my clients go back to their primary therapist that they came to me by, but some people end up like, and it's usually a mutual decision of like, hey, like I'm not the best therapist for you. And then part of my work is to help graduate them to a new primary therapist to help them make meaning out of the intensive process over the long term. Because I do think that that is important for someone to continue to see somebody after our intensives are over for at least like the next 6 months to a year, because, you know, as we know with EMDR, processing continues long after the session is over, and they're going to need somebody to work with in that.
That
But
brings me to a question. And if there's, you know, as people are listening live, like feel free to type your questions in the chat too. But it's like two parts. One is how you talk with the primary therapist or the referring therapist, like initially, like the type of how you like coordinate or collaborate or whatever. I'd love to hear about that. And then the second part, when you said that, I was like, are there any cases where the primary therapist like doesn't love that maybe the client needs something different like after the intensive is over? I know you said it mostly like is more of like a mutual decision of like, okay, go forth and get what you need. But maybe should we start with like how you set it up? Because maybe that sort of answers that question.
yeah, well, what typically happens is people reach out, like therapists reach out to me and they say, I have this client, or I've been struggling, or I'm trying to refer this client out because they, like you said, have reached a point where they're like, I'm so frustrated, I don't know.
Oh, so then at that point, maybe they're not feeling like they need, like they're okay with the client like having a new therapist or a new journey or something.
Well, what sometimes happens is like, especially with clients that have really secure attachment with their primary therapist, I say like, you know, give me 8 weeks with your client and let's see how you feel differently about this case. Because I think that, you know, sometimes like just encouraging the therapist to give it another shot, and to work through their frustration of like, hey, this person does have really good attachment with you. You have been working together for a long time. You have a lot of affinity built for each other. You want to do best by them. I know that this is breaking your heart thinking that you have to refer them out, but you actually still might be the best person for them. They just need additional support in this other
Yeah.
way. And so
Yeah.
a lot of times like therapists are like, oh, okay. And I think as intensives and especially as adjunctive intensives and especially as like at least locally, I've talked more and more and have collaborated with more and more people. People realize like I'm not here to steal their clients. Like I'm not
Mhm.
here to diminish their caseload. I do know the therapists who like just want to try to dump people that are more difficult than they want to deal with like onto me, saying that they need a trauma specialist. Like I think that that's another thing that can be difficult, is like not every good therapist is a trauma therapist or is trauma informed. Like there are lots of
Mhm.
different kinds
Mhm.
of therapies that people need, and being a trauma specialist is not a given for being a great therapist. And sometimes it's just about educating other, or my colleagues about like, hey, this is the course of trauma, and what you're experiencing now is really normal in treatment for where this person is at, based on
Mhm.
conversations I've had, or if I did a consultation with the client. Yeah, so I actually find that um it's, I don't want to say like I'm the babysitter, but it's like you give mom and dad a break. Like, like you give the person who's like primarily responsible a little bit of reprieve to like take a breath and like collect their wits, and then they're ready and refreshed to go back to work with that client.
I love that because I do see adjunctive work as a way to serve other therapists. And that feels better to me than like, it could have like maybe a suspicious vibe or something. But
Yeah.
I love that how you just explained that.
Yeah, I mean, and every therapist has a relationship with their client, like whether or not we want to admit it, or whether or not like we feel like we're totally rationally detached. Like we like and dislike people, and
Yeah.
we like and dislike clients, and
Yes, and they
sometimes
touch
even
our
people that we,
buttons or it stirs up our own stuff. And when you can have space,
yeah.
you can like see it from a different way.
Or if you've had like what ends up inevitably kind of happening with some of the therapists that I work with is, because issues have kind of like ebb and flow, like stuff with pandemic and like different kinds
Mhm.
of anxiety and stuff like that. Like there's almost like trends that kind of are almost culturally driven.
Yeah.
And some people just have so much of one thing on their caseload,
Right.
and they're kind of getting sick of it, and they're kind of getting tired of it. And I don't think that we always like call that, like name it what that is sometimes.
Yeah.
So being able to have somebody to like take that relief like off of your, or take a person or two off your schedule who's doing some other work, like allows you to dig deeper with those other people who need that. And then the other ones will come back and you're ready to do that other work with them.
Yeah. I heard you say like word of mouth, like you've been doing it a lot, and so like people kind of have a sense of who you are and your vibe. Are there other ways, whether on your website or like, I don't know, other places that you've sort of shared, spread the word about adjunct work?
Yeah, because I work in person exclusively, and Philadelphia is such a therapist rich place to be. Um, I've focused my like marketing in networking.
Mhm.
Um, so I have a networking newsletter that I send out
Ooh.
to therapists that are local that have, yeah, like signed up for it. And I usually do like a trauma related article. I usually give an article like that Emdria has passed along to me to just kind of keep
Yeah.
them refreshed on like what EMDR is like and how useful it can be. And then
And
um
that's such a like gift to them too.
Yeah, and I also I've been curating a calendar of like other people's groups so that people can see like as a resource, like, oh, I'm looking for a anti-diet culture group for women in their 30s, like
Yes.
has that, like, oh, look on the calendar and just see what's available. And, and people like run workshops or have one-off stuff or have like open houses at their practices. So I'm trying to really become like a connector hub for people.
Mhm.
To as a way to give back, right? Like knowing that like I do a lot of the receiving when a client gets referred to me, and I don't do as much referring out because people usually go back to their primary therapist. But yeah, I'm trying. So I'm trying really slowly but consciously to like engage myself and to be seen as somebody who like is kind of in the know of the scene, the local scene.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
I did 60 half-hour long um, networking meetings,
Did you say
virtual
60
meetings.
half-hour long? No.
Yeah, I did
Wow.
them in April and May, like a year ago, April and May last year. So,
Wow.
and yeah, I did not have a summer slump. I was like cruising through the fall.
Yes. Well, when
But
you have
yeah,
like a specific one, you're like intentionally making connections, and two, like what you do is very specific. So it's easy for people to remember. Like
yeah.
if they're having that experience, it's like, oh, Tina. And that's not as common either. So it's
I
even
also
more memorable.
And I also do have people who reach out to me because they'll happen upon my website or they'll hear about EMDR and they just, literally type in like Philly EMD, they type in my practice name and I pop up obviously and they're looking for ongoing therapy. And
Mhm.
there are people
Mhm.
that I do have to refer out because I'm just not going to do that treatment with them.
Yeah.
And so I actually do need to have like quality referrals. And so that was really the point of this initial push to do a lot of networking last year that I did in this way when I was really getting serious about like this particular adjunctive model that I had kind of been designing over time.
Right.
Um,
Right. And I
yeah, so
do like I know everybody's marketing strategy is different. Sorry, I kind of cut you off right there.
you're
But I've
fine.
seen the same thing that like having a conversation and just genuinely clicking with someone who you have a similar philosophy or value or whatever, like that turns into so much more than like making a flyer or sending an email or whatever else. Like when you're face to face with someone on Zoom or getting coffee and you have like that human connection,
Yeah.
that is like gold.
I do have, right, as a follow-up from them, that like individual connection, I do have a digital information kit that I send along to therapists.
Ooh.
So um it's basically I call it like a digital magazine, but I made it in Canva and it's just the viewing link. And
So
so
cool.
yeah, people are able to look through it and it describes briefly what EMDR is. It describes what adjunctive therapy is and, how it's designed for you to be seen by me for a specific amount of time and like to have
Yeah.
conversations around our relationship and then for you, to be seen by your primary therapist or to have a primary therapist to go back to afterwards. So it walks people, it's written in the voice for clients to find it informative, but I always send it to
Mhm.
referral or yeah, potential referral connections because I think that they're then able to like really wrap their minds around it. I also talk
And they
about
could like share it to their client. It's like you
yeah,
almost have two clients then because you're serving the therapist and you're serving their client. And so, yeah, kind of like making sure that both
yeah.
parties or like stakeholders are like well cared for and have everything they need.
Yeah, and I typically have space. Like for me, a full caseload is four clients a month. So that means if I'm working with them for 8 to 10 weeks, like I'm onboarding 2 new clients every month and I'm graduating 2 clients about every month.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if I have 4 or 5 referral sources that are each sending me 1 or 2 clients per year, like that's that's me full. So
Yeah,
it
yeah.
really doesn't take a ton of effort to have like the people who know you and respect you and like you work really well with to be able to have those good working relationships. And the nice thing about those people is like then our work for the client gets better and better the more that we
Yeah.
work together. And there are just
Because
some
they know like that's your zone of genius.
yeah, there are
I
some
know.
therapists that are like, you can't go to like, don't even bother. You like, feel free to look for another EMDR therapist, but anyone
Right,
with
but
Tina isn't going to be it.
exactly. I know people are probably wondering this. How long do you think it took for you to like establish that network or like those referral sources?
Um, I mean, I hate to say this, but like one of my best referral sources, like almost immediately found me. And like, I know
Yeah,
it was just dumb luck.
that's how I feel too, honestly, like truly. And you know what? It's another EMDR therapist who is phenomenal. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't know, when you truly like people, it's like an easy referral. Like, please go talk to Tina.
Yeah.
She's the one you need to talk to.
I also don't bullshit people. Like when I talk with people in my consults, one of the first lines that I tell them, and I mean, this is definitely like, to ease the tension to get a little bit of a laugh, but I say like, I am the Gorgonzola of therapists. Like I am not everybody's flavor and it's fine. But like, if you like it, then, and everybody like knows, like, they're like, oh yeah, I do like blue cheese or like, I do like Sinclair. And some people are like, oh no, I don't. But like, I know what you mean. So maybe
Right,
same
right.
things. Like, yeah.
And
So
then it's okay to not be like, you already said it. Like, it's okay. If we're not a fit, we're not a fit. Like, that's great. You can find
yeah.
your fit.
Well, and from there I say like, if I'm not the right fit for you, I want you to find the right fit because I know how incredible, like what good work you can do with when you're with the person who's the right fit. And
Yeah.
I know that if I am the right fit for you, that you are going to feel better.
Right. Like, we will hit the ground running.
Yeah.
One other question I'm thinking, and I'll go back to like our for real list, is people who are like, well, I'm not an EMDR therapist. Like, can I still do adjunct intensives? Um, and I have thoughts on that, but I'm curious to hear your reaction. Or I
I
can give my
think
thoughts and segue into it.
I think that there are a lot of modalities that can be adapted for an intensive or like a workshop style intervention. Yeah, Gestalt intensives, like Teresa just put
Yeah.
in I think that's great. Yeah. So like
I
some
know we have like some IFS folks on the call right now. That's a good one.
I've done, when I did my IFS level 1 training at the IFS Institute, I did, parts mapping intensives with people.
Ooh.
And I didn't do them with like new clients, but I did them with clients or people that I'd already worked with. And that's another thing about doing intensives is like in this calendar year, last fall, I did a training in ketamine assisted therapy. And now I'm providing it. And I love working with my previous clients. And I've been calling therapists that I've worked with and the clients we have in common. And I've said like, hey, I'm providing this intensively now as well. It's a 4-week intensive. It's 2 medicine sessions and 2 processing sessions after the initial kind of planning session for the whole situation. And it's so wonderful because I know the clients that I did EMDR work with, like have a whole new lease on life, have a
Yeah.
whole new nervous system.
Mhm.
And now we're able to go deeper with the medicine. And the psychedelic aspect of it is so helpful because I have this incredible wealth of knowledge of their system and their nervous system and their parts already. So yeah. So, I mean, I think, yeah, you can, I've been doing ketamine intensive, IFS. Like saw brain spotting in the comments. I think that's a
Yeah.
good one.
Yeah. Exactly.
Um, I
ART.
even think like, you could host like a CBT or a DBT intensives or like refreshers. Like if you do
Yeah.
CBT or DBT groups, like having intensive refreshers or, even like skills-based
Yes.
therapy, like any of that could be done, with a short window. I think that having like the correct supplemental materials and creating a whole world around it, I think like that's the thing is like, it is almost like writing a novel. Like I'm like world building with people in this particular, like, and I say like, okay, we're in a parentheses of therapy. Like this is like very different than like, this is the exception therapy to like the whole rest of what's going on in your life, and other therapeutic interventions you've had before, um, even including like other short-term therapy for like people who have been in like residential treatment or
Yeah.
psychiatric treatment. So
That's amazing. Oh my gosh, I am loving it. Oh, I think being able to, like you said, like have those parentheses, create that world, invite people into it, share with other therapists, like, hey, this is this like container I've created. If you have any clients that this would serve, or if this would serve you, let's like partner together.
yeah.
Okay, let me run through. We talked about what they are, how clients can benefit, how therapists can benefit. We talked a little bit about your structure. Is there anything that you would say like lessons learned or something you would say like you might want to avoid when offering adjunct intensives?
I think being very clear on how they get paid for is really important. That was definitely something that I think, I mean, I am not the cheapest therapist by any means, but um, I I know I do good work. I'm also not always great at collecting the money that people owe me.
Sure.
And I'm getting better at it. And there's so much of me that just like wants to help, and especially if it's like a case that I find like really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and what I've done to help with that is I do work with people on payment plans. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
have them, if they want to like hold a spot, like allow them to put a deposit. I also take care credit and am really careful to, not have a dual relationship by trying to promote a line of credit for people. But if they want to use that as, they would any other credit card and apply for it and get that line of credit, then they can use that. And then it's nice because the financial relationship is with the that financial institution and not with me, and then I
Yeah.
get paid up front.
Yeah. Yeah. You definitely don't want to have that dynamic in the relationship if you can help it.
Yeah, yeah. I also get pretty creative. There are a couple of different organizations that have funding sources. So I work really closely with Pennsylvania's Victims Compensation Program. Um, and that's been really great for being able to help people across a really wide variety of socioeconomic statuses and
Mm-hmm.
uh, get people really good care and get people also connected with other people who are really great at what they do beyond with these kinds of programs. But there are out there. The Health Well Foundation is another organization that I've worked with. They have a stipend for behavioral health treatment for first responders, so nurses, doctors, other folks who were impacted by COVID-19 and were kind
Yeah.
of on the front lines. So I've worked with them as well.
Yeah. That's great. Well, let me reach out to folks who are here live. Oh, Jean's asking, what are the names of those organizations again?
So I work with the victims compensation. Each state has their own program, and sometimes it's run like statewide, and sometimes it's run by like local municipalities. Um, but you should be able to like look up or Google your state's victims compensation or victim services program and see if there is some entitlement for people who have been impacted by crime and violent crime. And then the other one is the Health Well Foundation. The word health and then just well, all one word. That's the organization. They do, they're, I think, more well known. They're a foundation that does like copay, and they help provide finances for some experimental treatments that would otherwise be really expensive. So they have a couple different funds, but the behavioral health for COVID first responders was one that I worked with them.
Awesome. Such good resources. Any other questions from folks who are here live? Oh, thanks, Teresa. Put it in there. Health Well Foundation. Exciting. Well, I know I love doing adjunctive intensives. That's absolutely my #1 referral source for intensives. And like you said, you know, I had a similar experience where my weekly clients sort of started to like graduate out, and my intensive adjunctive clients started to raise up. And if you're doing, you know, you're working deeply with fewer clients, you really don't need as many referrals. You just need the right referrals. And so that can be, you know, like really, if that's a good fit for you, your style and your practice, that can be a cool format or a cool option to experiment with. So yeah, I love that. I love the picture of the coach, the different coaches. I love how it serves other therapists. It also breaks the stigma that like, if things aren't going totally well, that doesn't mean something's wrong with the client or the therapist. It just means like, let's welcome more people onto the team.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and then like take a look at what's working well. And man, that's just really exciting. I'm for sure gonna post a little like Ted Lasso picture of all the little coaches because that warms my heart.
I love
What
the
words?
idea.
I know, I'm loving it. What words of like wisdom or advice do you have for therapists who are like considering trying like beginning with adjunct intensives but might be feeling like nervous or maybe nobody else in their community does that and it's like totally new or foreign for people?
Stephanie, I don't know if you felt this way in like building your own intensives, but no one's going to give you permission, but no one's going to stop you.
Ooh, that is true.
So
You'd be shocked how far you can go.
Yeah, well, I mean, and as long as you're working within the scope of your practice,
Yeah.
and you are doing work that you are trained to do in the modality that you feel really, I think that the best advice is like pick a modality that you feel really passionately about. Like, so for me, it's EMDR intensives, but I do provide, you know, kind of after the fact, I'll do the ketamine intensives with people. I do use parts work with people. I, you know, am using motivational interviewing and CBT and some DBT skills, like as resourcing and stuff with people along the way. So I'm not, it's not just like, I don't think any therapist is ever doing just one therapy at one time. But pick what you're going to call it, you know, and be the person who does that.
Like
I
have
also
a clear message of like, this is what it is. You know, otherwise nobody knows like who to send to you.
yeah. And also like when I decided to be all in with this, I changed the name of my practice. Like I used to have kind of like a kind of like generic therapy practice name. And now I have a very like easily Googleable, like very easy to find, like very easy to tell people what it is. And like no one is confused about what I do. I mean, they're confused sometimes about the intensive part of it, but like they know I am an EMDR therapist. They know I have a trauma specialty. And so
yes.
yeah, so I think like being being niched or like doing the thing that you're really passionate about is like really helpful, and getting to be like known and seen for that as you're starting to dabble into adjunctive work. Also like networking with, like you were saying, I do have some great referral sources that are EMDR therapists, and they're great EMDR therapists. They just don't work as fast as I do. So when somebody wants to feel better in 3 weeks instead of 3 months, like they refer to me, or if they have a client that has a single incident trauma that they're having a really rough time with, like they'll come to me for a recent event exposure, even if they've done EMDR with that other therapist, just because like they know that I do that a lot and I'm really good at it. So there's, yeah, so kind of knowing like even within your specialty, like having the subspecialty of adjunctive and like letting people know that that's what you're doing. And just do like whatever model works for you. Like I don't want to work before 10 a.m. So like I don't see clients till noon on any given day. And I do 3-hour sessions. So I do a noon to 3, and then I'll do a 4 to 7 a couple nights a week, if necessary. And if people can't make the time work for 8 to 10 weeks, like I'm happy to write them a letter. Like I'm happy to provide documentation to their HR department that they're coming for a like out of medical necessity. If they can't make that schedule work, then like that's part of how I'm not the right therapist for them.
Right, right. That's so funny. And I'm like the opposite. Like I want my brain is the freshest in the morning. I want to do 9 to noon. And then the rest of the day I can piddle around and do admin tasks and pick my kid up from school, you know? So it's like
Yeah.
there's so much freedom to do what works for each person. And it's totally okay. It can work even if the logistics look different.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that there's no proprietary like intensive model. Like I made mine up, you made yours up. Like
Yep, yep.
I don't know who, like Cambria Evans made hers up, like Ricky Greenwald like made his up. Like they just started somewhere and like tried stuff. So
Yeah.
um
I
yeah.
love that. Like be free to try. And we're putting this as the quote of this, no one's going to give you permission, but no one's going to stop you. Like we're the ones who stop ourselves. You know, and I do truly, truly believe that like there's other therapists and there are people out there who need what you have to offer in the world. So don't hold yourself back.
Yeah.
Just give it a try. See what happens. We've been pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
And if
And
it
like
doesn't, then there's probably a different way.
yeah. And what you were saying before, like having a practice that works for you, like being a therapist in private practice, like being thrown into running a business when I am a behavioral scientist, like was not like, I don't know anything about running a bit. Like I didn't know anything before I started, but here I am. And like, we learn along the way, and I think that's really valuable and really important, but that also means that like trying new stuff like isn't bad or wrong. Like if it fits you, if it fits your lifestyle, if like you cycle through it, then like great. Like I've also had a fantasy of like getting licensed in Hawaii and like running a giant Airbnb and just doing like, group intensives for the month of October and just spending like,
Oh my gosh.
3 weeks working and 1 week like screwing around in Hawaii. And like that's stuff that can be done. Like people do it.
Yeah.
The only thing that's different between you and somebody who's doing it is that you haven't done it yet.
Yes. That is so true. That is really, I think it's like just try and see what's going to happen. I think you'll be surprised.
And everybody has a couple of clients that like they know are like down to experiment. Like you have a good rapport, like they're like stable enough, they're pretty chill people. They may be like kind of type B, like they yeah, like the clients that I had to pick clients to do my ketamine practicum with, and there were several people that are like, hey man, yeah, let's do drugs. Like,
Right.
cool. But yeah, people were delighted to be like, oh yeah, like I'll set aside a Saturday afternoon to like do 3 hours of therapy with you to see how you feel and see how it works and if we like it. And that's really how it
Amazing.
started was, the people I was seeing weekly, I'd be like, hey, I noticed that like when I don't look at the time and I accidentally give us 90 minutes instead of 60 minutes, like you actually do really well. Why don't we intentionally go 90 minutes? Why don't we try 2 hours? Well, hey, 2 hours is great. Let's try. Let's see if your brain can push a little further.
Yeah, that's so funny because in the Facebook group, people like we encourage like post how it's going, post your celebrations. And the theme I've been seeing lately is people being like, those 3 hours went by so fast. Like everybody's so freaked out to be like, what the heck am I gonna do for 3 hours? Oh my gosh, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, no, when you're actually in it, like you're usually in a flow. And then you blink and it's like, whoa. Here we are, and like look at everything that's happened.
And I know a lot of people, a lot of therapists who don't do EMDR, who aren't trauma specialists are like, God, aren't you exhausted afterward? Like,
Not
no,
really.
I feel like I could send lightning bolts out of my fingertips. I'm so excited for my clients. Like, I'm so excited about how much they got done in such a short amount
Yeah.
of time. Like, I'm super jazzed about it.
Right, right. I do think I know we're like about at time, so we'll kind of like begin to wrap up. But I do think like that's another reason why intensives are so good for like building resilience and like preventing burnout is because when you see transformation happen fast, like you said, I could send lightning bolts out my fingers. Like I'm the elite. I look at this amazing therapy that just happened. And it's like, yes, it's about you. You're an amazing therapist, but like the format just makes space for it to happen.
Yeah.
Like 50 minutes, man, that's tough. Like it's
Yeah.
tough to see something really big happen in it. You can't even watch a movie in 50 minutes. So
Yeah.
like, of course, you're not going to have a huge life-changing breakthrough.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but yeah, no, it is so exciting to see those changes happen. It just fills you up so much.
Yeah, totally.
Oh my gosh. Okay, Tina, thank you for being here. This is so fun. We have to keep doing this more and more. If you love Tina and you want to hear more about, the work she does and keep learning from her, she is going to be a speaker at the Therapy Intensive Summit coming up in May. She's going to be speaking about, well, say your title. It's so good. Do you remember it?
No.
Okay, it's expanding psychotherapy intensives with psychedelics.
Oh yeah.
It was like a badass title. So I was like, oh yes. And then Tina's also going to be participating on the panel of therapists who have built an intensive focus or like an intensive only practice. So if you're not on the wait list yet for the summit, I'll put the link here. It's therapyintensivesummit.com. And that's going to be May 13th or 16th. Yay!
If anybody has any questions, because I know we're just out of time, but if anybody has any questions about like care credit or like I saw one in the chat about that, or just yeah, needs me to give them like one-liners of inspiration, feel free to email me. My email is really easy. It's tina@phillyemdr.com. That's Philly, PHILLYEMDR.com. So yeah, shoot me an email and I'm happy. I'll probably send you a link to do a little networking with me. That's how it works, is you reach out to people and you send them a link, and then when it's attached to your schedule, they just schedule, and then you show up and you have a great time and meet new awesome people. So send me an
Yay!
email, I'll send you a link.
I love that. And for folks who are watching the replay, can they just comment on the chat below? Are you like a Facebooker or is email easier for you?
I'll monitor the comments for this. Yeah, I'll monitor the comments, and if people like have any follow-ups or whatever, I'll also probably drop the link for networking. Or if you are looking to do I do consultation for EMDR consultation. So if you're looking to get EMDR certified and you want to focus on trying intensives in your practice, I am your gal. So
Yeah.
happy to do that double focus with you.
Amazing. Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Everybody take good care. Have a great, I was like Thursday, right? I never know what day it is. All right. See ya.